They prorated the will, they did all kinds of.
Let the record reflect we have reconvened with all members present. Please note that Ben Wolkowitz and Carmela Vitale are absent excused tonight. Please rise for the pledge and please remain standing after the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And please remain standing. Tonight, I want to recognize two great women we have lost in the last 2 weeks. On Saturday, January 27th, we lost Shirley Clement. Shirley, along with her husband Al, who died in 2012, were Madison residents for over 60 years, raising her 3 daughters, Nancy, whose husband Jeff Pettit serves on the Patriotic Celebrations Committee, Janet, and Carol. Longtime business administrator for the Madison School District. Shirley eventually went on to become business administrator at Department of Education for Morris County and then with the state of New Jersey. And as stated in her obituary, Shirley's life was devoted to helping others and giving back community, which she loved. She volunteered her time at the Madison Downtown Development Commission for 15 years, where she served as chair, the Senior Advisory Committee, and the Madison Shade Tree Management Board. Her insight and leadership was so respected. When a new idea was suggested, it was always asked, "Did you run that past Shirley?" And more recently, as you see, the first chair in the second row with a white ribbon and roses in memory of Louise Paterson. As every time I would walk in this room, that would be my first stop to say hello to Louise. She also, a longtime resident of Madison, died on Sunday, February 4th, at the age of 90. She was elected to the Morris County Republican Committee as a district leader for Madison and served that position for many years. She enjoyed gardening, decorating, and painting. Her husband predeceased her in 1989, and she's survived by her son Robert, who is joining us tonight, and daughter Patricia, along with many grandchildren. And anyone who knew her, the first 2 words that would come to mind in describing Louise were sweet and loving. And for those who had the honor to serve Madison as mayor or on the council, we will always remember Louise sitting right there with her smile on, just as she did 3 weeks ago. And on a personal note, she knew my mother through Kent Place. And every time I would say hello to her, even though I lost my mother 40 years ago, Louise never failed to mention what a great woman my mother was. She also had passion for her church, passion for her Madison, and of course, passion for her Republicans. And she would often call me over and say, "I can't let anyone hear this, but you're doing a very good job as mayor, Bob." And to remember Louise, I think anyone I ever talked to her also would remember, she would put her hand here and say, "You are in my heart and in my prayers." So let us all put our hands to our chests and say to Louise and Shirley, "You are in our hearts and our prayers." And let's take a moment of silence for these 2 great women. Thank you. A motion for the regular minutes of January 20, or executive minutes of January 22nd, 2018.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And a motion for the regular minutes of January 22nd, 2018.
So moved.
Second.
January 22nd?
What did I say? January 22nd, 2018. So we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, welcome all. And welcome all that came to honor the memory of Louise. We will miss her. A couple of things happening over the last couple of weeks. A week ago tonight in this room, we held our semi-regular committee leadership training. And this is where we invite the chairs and vice chairs and any other committee members to come here and get trained on the ins and outs of serving on a borough committee, which is far different than serving on your neighborhood committee or anything along that's not a government-based committee. And we had 25 committee members from Madison joined by 25 committee members from Chatham. So it was another shared service to have the two groups getting together and also sharing ideas. I want to thank Liz Osborne for her presentation on the ins and outs related to the clerk's point of view. And Gina Antone, our attorney, works with John, was there also from the do's and don'ts from the legal perspective. Also, this past Saturday, on the 10th, I presented a proclamation to Coach Tony Lisapio, who was a Madison High School varsity wrestling coach from 1968 to 1987, amassing a record of 172 wins, 84 losses, and 1 tie. And the North Stars Club were filled with many of his former wrestlers honoring his time. They also, at the high school, named the wrestling room in his honor. And our employees for the month of February are Chrissy Mahler and Hattie Evans, the tax collector's office. As you know, that things were a little crazy at the end of December in the tax collector's office, so we want to thank them for all the work they did in processing the 2018 prepaid taxes. And on to reports from committees. Health.
I'll do that. I'm also going to do the Public Works.
Yes, thank you.
So from the Health Department, flu vaccines are still available. The Health Department continues to recommend that residents get vaccinated anytime through the end of the flu season, which this year they will believe will extend into May. An email advising of the flu vaccine availability was recently sent to the public school superintendents in Madison and other contract towns. This has resulted in many calls requesting appointments for vaccinations for both children and adults who have been unable to receive them elsewhere. Most of the individuals were not aware that we were providing this service and have been very appreciative that we do. Initial retail food establishments inspections for 2018 are underway. In addition, plans for new establishments have been submitted and are being reviewed. Next, a free rabies clinic will be held on February 24th in Springfield at the Chisholm Center, which is located at 100 South Springfield Ave. The clinic hours are between 10 a.m. and 12 noon. This is one of the health services we provide to Springfield as part of our shared services agreement, and that clinic is open to all New Jersey residents. Contact the Health Department at 973-593-3079 for more info. Next, there's going to be a Health Department Lunch and Learn at Whole Foods on Thursday, February 15th from 11:30 a.m. to 12:30 in the afternoon. The topic will be Health Department Services. Next, from MASSA, it is sponsoring a sticker shop campaign by the Madison Pharmacy. Local liquor stores are cooperating with this initiative, which identifies specific products that may be typically purchased by an underage buyer. Stickers and hangers are being placed on these products throughout the store to act as warning labels and to inform the public of the consequences that they face if they provide or purchase alcohol for minors. And last, tobacco retailers will be receiving educational packets prepared by the Health Department in this March that will contain valuable information about a new state law that restricts the sale of cigarettes and other tobacco and nicotine-related products to individuals who are 21 years of age or older. Yes, you have to be 20 or older to smoke, okay. Next, from the Public Works Department. Public Works team is working with PSC&G on a major issue affecting the Civic Center. Their natural gas line under Walnut Street has been filling with water, and this cuts off the heat source for the entire complex. This afternoon, the DPW was on site and was expecting PSC&G to come in and assist with identifying the problem. Also, we had a major water main collapse last evening on Rosedale. The public service crew was out laboring into the night, repairing the water main and restoring service to the area. We want to commend them for the quick and efficient response and this issue and many other weather-related issues this winter. Also, the Public Works Department is teaming up with the Environmental Commission to do a Madison Town Swap. It will help you clean out your garage, attic, or closet at Madison's Free Town Swap. Please bring in your old items and come away with something new. This is going to be held on Saturday, April 28th. It will be all day, and it will be at the Borough Garage. And now from the engineering department. The 2018 road improvement program is currently advertised and out to bid. The projects include sidewalks on Central Avenue plus the following roads: Crestwood, Rosewood, Kensington, and Greenwood. The bid opening is going to be scheduled for March 29th. The county has also approved the Plain Street reconstruction project, and that will be advertised later this week. For our mill and overlay program, contracts have been recommended for award. Tilcom is a cooperative bidder for the resurfacing program, which will include Barnesdale, Winding Way, Elmer Street, Keep Street, Kings Road, from Prospect to Green Village, and the Cook Avenue parking lot. Next, the Central Avenue water main replacement continues with pavement saw cutting by our general contractor. Also, 4 proposals were received for the 2019 program surveying services. After an evaluation, a recommendation for award has been made. The surveying work is scheduled to be completed this spring. And the Garden Club is evaluating a grant application which will include rain garden landscape planning at Gibbons Place. It's part of a stormwater control feature that was included in last year's road program. And finally, the sewer cleaning and videotaping will occur on several streets this month, including Glenwild, Hillcrest, Woodcliff Drive, Academy, Carteret, Stafford, Lawanica Terrace, Vinyl Place, Ross Court, Walnut Street, and DeHart Place. A follow-up sewer repair contract is being prepared for bid. And finally, there's one more item. For the Hartley Dodge Plaza renovations, the request for historic project qualifications will be distributed to eligible contractors at the end of this month. Thank you.
Thank you. Finance and Borough Clerk, Ms. Bailey.
Thank you, Mayor. From the tax assessor, every property owner in town should have received a card from the assessor detailing the appeal process. Property owners that disagree with their assessment have the annual right to appeal the assessment, and they must be filed before April 1st. The card includes other helpful information, including a link to a state guide to tax appeal hearings. Please contact the tax assessor if you have any questions. From the Finance Department, on February 1st, the Finance Department made the semi-annual interest payment to the Environmental Infrastructure Trust for the borough's portion of debt associated with the Madison Chatham Joint Meeting Sewage Treatment Plant. Later this week, the Finance Department will make the semi-annual interest payment for the MRC debt. This payment covers interest on both the land and the turf field, and it is paid for from the Open Space Trust Funds. And earlier in January, the Chief Financial Officer filed the borough's annual debt statement. This document must be submitted to the State of New Jersey Division of Local Government Services before the end of January, and it summarizes the debt associated with both the borough and the Board of Education. And this document can be found on the annual budget process page on Rosenet. From the Tax Collector's Office, senior citizens and disabled persons who qualify can receive a $250 a year deduction on their property taxes. An application must be filled out with proof of income eligibility. The Tax Collector's Office mailed out applications to residents who qualified last year. Residents interested in learning more are encouraged to visit the Tax Relief Program page on Rosenet. And that's it, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. And with Community Affairs and Public Safety, Ms. Byrne.
I have no public safety. You have public.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm new at this. I keep sorry.
From Community Affairs, the DDC would like to remind everyone again that the Taste of Madison is coming up, and tickets are up for sale through the Gary's website or through Taste of Madison's website. And from the Senior Center is getting a really big overhaul. They're getting new windows, new flooring, paint is probably on its way, and I think when the job is finished, it will be much better for the Senior Center. So that's it.
Thank you. And with Utilities and Public Safety, Mr. Hoover.
Yes, sir. Honor. First, I'll start with the Police Department. I had the pleasure of attending on January 26th the annual breakfast that's held to recognize and thank the school crossing guards that are managed by Traffic Safety Corporal Vincent Delaval. One thing of interest was that crossing guard Andrew Cobb was honored with a plaque for his dedication to the position and not missing one day at work in 6 years. And he's like 90 some odd years old. It's unbelievable.
Yep.
Great guy. That's the Police Department. Fire department, during the month of January, the fire department responded to 22 general alarms, 18 still alarms, 42 investigations, and 55 medicals. There was a total of 137 calls for assistance. 3 department drills held during the month of January. Topics covered were the truck and engine equipment familiarization, forcible entry techniques, water supply, and standpipe operations. 32 fire inspections were performed, and 3 safe housing inspections were performed as well. 13 smoke, CO, resale inspections were performed. One of the things I want to mention about the fire, about this whole town, the way it works, is the couple of engines went down during the month, and they were fixed by our own DPW, which I think is just fabulous. That was just really great. Saves us a lot of money. Okay, for the electric department, for the month of February, as of February 12th, they installed 5 post lights at the KRE project, and from what I understand, that project is now completed. They had 100 markouts, 6 new services and 3 meter changes were done, and they did 12 street light repairs. And that's pretty much it from the electric department. Water department had 100 requests for locating and marking underground utilities. 2 curb boxes were checked and shut off for homeowner inside work at the request of the contractors for water that is for temporary use at construction sites. 2 curb boxes were located and repaired, and 14 meter installations, meter head or outside registers were installed, and frozen meters were replaced. That's pretty much it for the water department. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Moving on to communications and petitions.
None received.
All right, this is the first of 2 invitations for discussion. This is limited to items on our agenda under agenda discussions, which include the amending Borough Code Chapter 195-28 improvements. We'll see a presentation on the draft municipal budget, and there'll be many more opportunities to comment on that. I know it's tough to comment before you see it, but you'll have plenty of opportunities coming up. And then also, as Pat reported about the town swap event, we'll have a discussion on that, so you can comment on that. Also, the resolutions, which I'll quickly cover, so you can either comment on or you're aware of them as we do the consent agenda. Resolution 68 is a professional services contract to Akari Iovano Architects, and this is for work for the Madison Public Library, and this is in preparation of the bond issue that was passed in the fall that will give us an opportunity for improvement money, shared expense with the state. Resolution 69, supporting the Madison Environmental Commission Green Vision Forum. 70 is the resolution to amend the developers agreement between the Borough of Madison and Giralda Open Space Management Association. In particular, that will be removing the man gate at Madison Avenue. The man gate at Woodland is Chatham Township, and they will most likely be taking the same action. 71 is resolution appointing Robert Duffy the position of part-time executive assistant to provide support to the DPW in place of this is part-time, this is in place of what was a full-time position in the past. Resolution 72, awarding a contract to Tilcon. The rest of these are all under, or the next couple are under county co-op, and so this is a set price, and this is just awarding, so it's Tilcon not to exceed $400,000. That's related to our mill and overlay program. 73 is crack sealing, awarding to micropave systems. 74 is road striping for the projects that are larger than what our borough and DPW can handle. For Denville, the line striping. Also a contract, 75, is also under the co-op for curb replacement to Cefelli and Son. And then the next one is 76, doing the surveying, looking forward to our 2019 projects, and that's being awarded to Omlin and Osterkorn. And then we have, at a previous meeting, we passed 2 resolutions purchasing gasoline and diesel fuel through the co-op, and that was to a different company. The co-op has shifted, and so it's just authorizing purchase to Allied Oil for diesel fuel and gasoline. Resolution 79 has been pulled. Resolution 80 is appointing Thomas Metter to the position of intern from Madison Police Department, and Resolution 81 is rejecting all bids to the Elmer Street project. There were some flaws in bids, and so they're rejected, and then we'll go back out again on the street. And the Resolution 82 is authorizing DPW garage for the town swap on April 28th. So anyone wishing to comment on any of those or the 3 agenda items I mentioned, please step forward, state your name, your address, and the item you are discussing. Later on, you'll have an open one. You don't have to limit it to those discussion items, but right now it's just one of those, and please keep your comments to 3 minutes. But I will give you a 1-minute grace period and close you at 4. Anyone wishing to comment, please step forward. Seeing none, I close this part of the meeting. And let's go back to find my spot. Excuse me. Got my pages out of order. We are, thank you. Yes, I should have. So the amend the Borough Code Chapter 195. I'll find that page.
I can take that, Mayor.
Great.
This is a recommendation from the Borough Engineer's Office. There's a recent state law that allows municipality, provided they adopt an ordinance, to require an applicant or developer to post a performance guarantee or restoration bond, so that in the event that somehow they default or declare bankruptcy or don't complete the project, the borough can use those funds to restore the site to a safe and stable condition and to make it safer for the general public. So there's nothing we need to do tonight. It was just informational. At the next meeting, we'll bring an ordinance to that effect if the council is supportive of that concept. And it's a request from the engineers and the attorney for both boards.
Questions for Ray? Certainly sounds like a good thing to do.
Oh, I was just going to say that.
Okay, so we'll be coming back at the next meeting with the ordinance.
Yep.
Thank you very much. Item 2, 2018 draft municipal budget discussion. Our
Thank you,
CFO.
Mayor. I'm going to present from here if that's okay. That way Ray can kick me under the table if you want something to say. Let's say something. This presentation is already up on Rosenet. Always encourage people to visit, as Councilwoman Bailey said, the annual financial process page on Rosenet. And I think, Councilwoman Bailey, do you want to open up with comments? Or?
Yep, sure. I'm the finance liaison this year, and Carmela Vitale is my backup. So we began working with our borough administrator, Mr. Cody, and Mr. Burnett, our CFO, and we established some principles and priorities for the 2018 budget, which include maintaining all services, upgrade the critical assets and infrastructure, including the Chatham-Madison Joint Sewage Treatment Plant, prepare for the impact of the federal tax legislation, move closer to satisfying the 2014 strategic planning guidelines, improve the borough's security, both the physical security and the cyber security, emphasize smart planning with a new master plan for the town, give the town manager the resources needed to maintain our business and commercial districts' vibrancy and vitality, continue to coordinate all our communications with residents and increase transparency. And so, over the coming weeks of this whole budget process, it's our responsibility to review this budget, ask questions, get input from our residents, and debate the key issues. And some of those issues include, what is the right amount of capital investment? What is the appropriate amount of any property tax increase? How much should the electric dividend be? How much electric utility surplus should be used in the budget? What level of services do we want to provide our residents? And what steps should we take to prepare for the impacts of the federal tax reform? So I'm going to turn it over to Jim because he's going to try to answer
all those questions.
Right?
We're gonna present a budget that hopefully satisfies all those guidelines. And bear with me here. I want to talk a little bit just briefly about the agenda. We'll talk about the process and steps involved in crafting a budget. We'll present a draft budget. We'll focus on the appropriation side or the spending side of the budget, including a breakdown by department. We'll review the municipal surplus We will review the electric and water utility performance in 2017 and the surplus generated in the proposed budget for those two units in 2018. We'll briefly review the 5-year capital plan, which will get council prepped for the next meeting where the department heads will come in. One caveat, all the numbers that we're presenting here are draft. In terms of 2017 performance, we'll have final numbers or closer to final numbers by February 26th. We always present numbers as draft numbers until the audited financial statement audit comes out in April in terms of performance and surplus. So with that, I always want to remind people that on Rosenet is a page called the annual budget process, and those interested in learning more are invited to visit that page. That's where this presentation is, all presentations that have already occurred, and a calendar of the next steps. The budget schedule is on that page. The mayor and council saw a draft 5-year capital plan December 11th. January 22nd, Open Space Trust Fund was discussed. On January 30th, as Councilwoman Bailey mentioned, the annual debt statement was submitted to the state. If you want to see that, that's on that page. We'll be submitting our unaudited annual financial statements in the coming days, and then the rest of the budget schedule, which is this evening, initial budget review, and the next week, department head operating and capital. March 7th will be a big meeting, a special meeting dedicated to the review of the capital budget and the strategic planning guidelines. Administration's hope is that we'll leave that meeting with firm marching orders. The next step would be administration would prepare the actual official state budget document, which would be introduced on March 26th and hopefully adopted April 23rd. We need to keep to those guidelines in order to satisfy best practices and confirm that we receive 100% of our state aid. April 23rd is the last council meeting for adoption to adhere to those. And as state guidelines dictate and state statute dictates, there needs to be at least 28 days between introduction and adoption.
And just to confirm again, the special meeting is March 5th, 7 p.m.
What do I have, March 7th there?
I think you said March 7th.
March 5th,
You
7
picked up the
p.m.
time,
I
yep.
apologize. Thank you. So, how's the budget created? There's capital budgets. The capital budgets are created by staff, council, department heads, committees like the Utility Advisory Committee and the Open Space Committee, and they're developed throughout the year. Department head budgets are worked on with the various department heads and administration, and that's done July through September. Financial document preparation is done by the finance department from November to February, and public meetings occur with the council and the general public from December to February. So as you can see, this pretty much happens, budget's happening all the time. In terms of the budget process, it starts with strategic planning and council initiatives from prior actions. And then capital is discussed, open space is discussed, the municipal budget is discussed, utilities are discussed, department operating budgets are discussed with various department heads, and we'll typically go around a couple times around. And hopefully this evening we'll get through completing this circle once. We'll complete it one more time. That gives everyone the opportunity to see the entire picture at one point in time. There are 3 entities, and I'm not sure everyone fully understands this, I know council does, that are actually embedded within the state budget document. There's the current fund, which is the main budget, and that includes police, fire, public works, library, sewage, garbage recycling. The electric utility is its own separate entity that has its own budget, and that includes field operations, back office, billing, and capital. And the water utility is its own entity that also includes field operations, back office, billing, and capital. So in the state budget document, we actually have separate budgets for each, and we'll be presenting those budgets this evening. I'm not going to read from some of these slides. I'm just going to have it presented in case people want to read further. This is one of those slides where I'm not fully going to read, but each one of those accounts, the current fund, the water utility, and the electric utility all have a capital account. And I like to say the capital account is the piggy bank. Every year we put money into the piggy bank, and then money is appropriated via ordinance out of those piggy banks. And this evening there's some ordinances for introduction to appropriate funds out of those pots. So each of the 3 funds, current, electric, and water, has its own operating budget, and each has its own capital account. So real briefly, I've said this multiple times, is it a budget or a spending plan? At home, my wife and I have a budget, and if good things happen, we can change, like college education didn't go up. We maybe have a little more money to spend. And if bad things happen, we don't have as much money to spend, and we can adjust our spending throughout the year. That doesn't happen in the municipal world. In the municipal world, the council and administration offers a budget to council. Council votes on a budget. Each line item in those black books is a set amount that we can purchase. So fuel has a set amount. Road salt has a set amount. We tend to set those amounts a little higher than normal because we don't know if it's going to be a good year or a bad year. So I say it's a spending plan because once the council votes on this, we're basically not changing it throughout the year. So I think it's better to call it a spending plan. As a reminder, this is a breakdown of your tax bill. This was presented in the one-sheet budget summary that was mailed to all residents with their earlier in the year over the summer. We bill for 100% of your property taxes, but the municipality gets 22.5%. The 77.5% goes to the school and to the county. So I just always want to remind people that that's the breakdown. So this is the draft municipal budget, and I purposely, not to drive Melanie or anyone else crazy, made it gray on top because we don't want to focus on the top. We want to focus on the bottom. And Christine, I promise I'll get you I have a printed copy for you here. So, as a matter of fact, I can give this to you at the end of the meeting. We're going to focus on the bottom, which is the appropriations side. As I said, this is available online if anybody wants to see it at any point in time. I apologize if you can't read it here. But we're going to focus this evening on appropriations. I'm going to talk for a few minutes about payroll data. This is something that Madison does, and I'm looking at Ray. I don't know that many other towns do this. We actually publish payroll data for every employee, every full-time employee in the town. You can go online and see it, and you can see the history for 2013 to 2017, the W-2 reported gross income. I do want to say, and it says on that page, that W-2 gross income includes base pay, step increases, overtime pay, standby pay, and it also includes pay that certain employees, specifically police officers, receive that are not paid by the borough. For example, the court security is not 100% paid by the borough. It's paid by all the courts, the member municipalities of the court, and outside duty. Outside duty is when PSE&G or another entity comes in and needs to close off the road. Driving through town in the middle of the night these days, you'll see the police out there. That's fully funded by the utilities. So that's not coming out of our budget, but that does get reflected in these numbers, which is why you tend to see police towards the top of the list in terms of compensation. Largest department appropriations, and I should say, if anybody really wants to jump out with a question, jump out or just jot it down and we can circle at the end. These are the largest department appropriations. This is the first year I'm presenting this way. I have presented it for the top 5 in the one-sheet budget summary, but I'm going to present all of them. The police department is a little over $6 million, public works $4.1 million, the fire department $2.7, garbage and recycling $1.6, the library is $1.4, and sewage treatment is 1.1. This is the budgeted numbers for 2018, and that's sewage treatment is the Madison-Chatham joint meeting. I do want to point out, because the budget, police numbers and fire numbers may seem high, that the finance department is only open Monday to Friday, 8 to 4:30. The police department is open 24/7, 365. The fire department is staffed 24/7, 365. So I just want to point out that they have staff here, the equivalent of 3 shifts, when the finance department and others only have 1 shift. These numbers all include, are fully loaded with health, pension, Social Security, and other fringe benefits. Here's a graphical chart showing all of the different departments and major expense lines within the budget. And you can see the police, public works, fire, garbage, library, and sewage are the main items. I also have a chart here showing the appropriations broken down and the percentage of those appropriations if you added up that line and then divided it by each item. So the police represent 26.6% of all of those operating items listed there. There are other operating items or other items within the budget, but that's the percentage of what we'll call appropriations excluding capital debt, reserve for uncollected tax, and a few other items. So this gives you an indication of the size and scope of each department, fully loaded with fringe. I want to point out that you look at the court and go, wow, we have a they're doing a great job for what they're doing. But there are a number of other towns that are helping to defray and reduce the costs of the court. And because we house the court here, we get payments for having court sessions here. So all of the numbers that have the asterisks in them, specifically construction and court and health, are all net of revenue that we receive from the shared service agreements that we have with the various municipalities. So year-over-year changes from 2017 budget to 2018 budget are shown here, with the police department being about $400,000 and the fire department being $131,000. Public Works being a reduction of $147,000, sewage treatment a reduction of $100,000, and grants a reduction of $80,000. We will go over each of those specifically. But here's a list of every department with the pluses and minuses. If I were to flash back to the beginning budget document that we had, a number of pages that Christine jumped up and was taking a picture at, you would see that the budget is only increasing by $256,000. So the fact that we have certain departments that are actually more than the growth of the entire budget shows that there are a significant number of departments, public works, sewage treatment, and admin and clerk, that are actually less this year than they were last year. So are there any questions on any of the particular departments here? If not, I will go through the police,
We
public
got
works.
Austria and then Pat.
Oh, okay, so you have two with percentage change that are pretty significant, the police department and construction. So could you explain?
Sure. I'll explain police in a minute. Police, we have a separate slide explaining that. Construction, we had increased one employee from part-time to full-time because construction is going gangbusters. And later on, you'll hear that municipal surplus had an exceptional year because the construction revenues were exceptional. So that change, while percentage-wise, 7.5% seems like a large increase, it was only $48,000 as compared to some of the other lines that went up by $400,000 or down by $140,000. So from a percentage standpoint, it's significant, which has happened. Well, that's not good. Ooh, it scared me. Okay. And for the police, Austria teed me up on that. Did you have a question?
Or Pat had one.
Yeah, one quick question. The police department numbers, are they inclusive of special duty costs, or is that outside this budget?
That's outside. So special duty gets done through a trust. Mm-hmm. So even if the borough's own capital project requires payment, that gets paid through the outside duty trust. Mm-hmm. PSE&G, that job on Main Street, that gets paid through the outside duty trust. Money goes in and out there, so it doesn't come into the municipal budget. Good question. So the police department up 6.9%, an increase of $391,000. What changed? The salary step guide in the union contract that was recently negotiated to make the salaries for younger officers more competitive with neighboring towns. Our salary guide used to go like this, kind of straight up. From the lowest salary to the top of the salary. The problem was the salaries in the first few years were not at all competitive with neighboring communities, and we were losing or were going to lose a number of employees that had trained with the borough for 2 or 3 years. We'd invested significant dollars in them, and then we were going to lose them and have to hire a new employee that was completely untrained. So we basically kind of did a bubble to the salary step guide. The beginning was the same, the end is the same, it just climbs a little quicker in the beginning and then levels off as it gets to the end. This will be the 1 year that bubble really hits this budget. And so I don't anticipate a percentage increase like this at all with the police department next year. And it only takes one major retirement for a significant reduction from a salary of $110,000 to $40,000. That can be a $70,000 savings with one retirement. We're not expecting any. We don't budget for it unless we know it. So for those reasons, this year is a big year for the police department. The fire department, the increase is primarily due to a contractual salary increases and pension increase costs of $29,000. I do want to step back and say the police department had a $61,000 increase in their pension costs, and we'll talk about that, or I'll present that in a minute. But the fire department had a $29,000 increase. One main reason this bumped up this year was that we are assuming a new entry-level hire to replace a longtime employee who we know will be retiring in the middle of the year, but will be on the books and on the payroll until the end of the year. So in order to not blow up the overtime budget, it's actually going to be less expensive for us to hire a new entry-level person. So I actually anticipate the fire department budget could actually decrease next year. So this will kind of be a one-time jump. A quick sidebar on pensions. There's two pension systems, the police and fire retirement system and the public employees retirement system. It is a defined benefit plan for those who know what pensions are. There's really two kinds. There's the 401k where you put your own money in it and you get it out. That's a defined contribution plan. This is a defined benefit plan. When the employee retires, they get a defined salary amount or dollar amount every month, like an annuity. So that's the type of pension system that we have here in the state of New Jersey, and there were significant increases in the pension numbers, and it's a significant cost to the borough of Madison. These are the borough bills that we got this year for the pension. Police and fire were over $1 million. That's only for 40 employees, so it's a cost of $25,000 per police officer or firefighter. The public employees retirement system, which is what every other full-time employee is in, has 102 employees and was less than $1 million. So the cost is significantly less, 60% less than what the cost is for police and fire. And the main reason is that the police and fire, many people may not know, an employee that's hired at age 22 after 25 years can retire at age 47 and immediately start to draw their pension down, and it'll be their full pension that they can draw, and they start at age 47. An employee in the clerk's office or in the construction department or finance or court, if they retire, they cannot start taking their pension until age 60 or 65 is when they would get typically most would get their full benefit. So because that officer is getting that pension payment starting so early, after 25 years, immediately at retirement, the cost is significantly more expensive. I do want to point out that not too many people know this, the police do not they can opt out of Social Security. So a typical employee in finance or administration or any other area, the borough pays 6.2% into the Social Security system for that employee. We don't do that for a police or firefighter. So the difference in fringe is it's about 43% of an employee's salary. That's a public employee in the PER system. It's about 50% for for police or fire. So it's more significant. It's higher, but not that much higher.
Pat?
One other question. The post-retirement healthcare benefits for the police and fire, is that paid by us through this fund, or is it paid by the state?
By the state.
Sorry?
The state pays 80%, the employee pays 20% post-retirement.
Okay, so it's not covered by us. All right.
But the bill, it gets rolled into the state, and then they send us the bill and divide it up among all the towns in New Jersey. So we're paying it.
We're not paying directly, but we're
One way or another,
Paying
we're
it through the
paying.
premium.
Yes.
Oh, we are okay.
Maureen?
These pension numbers, do they include healthcare, or is healthcare?
This is just pension, and this is just the borough's contribution to the pension system. Each employee actually also contributes to the pension system as
Do
well.
they lose their health benefits when they leave?
When they retire, it depends. A lot of employees will stay till age 65, and then they go right to a federal health insurance, Medicare. So it depends on when they retire. A police officer at age 47, the vast majority of them can get employment elsewhere that would give them benefits. They would draw that pension down. And what would you want to say about health?
I was going to say that for every other employee, we do not have retiree health benefits. There was a decision by the governing body many, many years ago So unlike other towns, for non-police or fire employees, we don't provide health benefits, retiree health benefits. So the employees tend to stay longer, and that's what Jim's alluding to. So they stay to age 65, and then if and when they are eligible for Medicare, then they start to think about retirement. But
I've looked at other towns' budgets. It is so clear and obvious which towns have retiree health benefits because their health insurance costs are staggering compared to the boroughs. So kudos to previous councils for making the decision to not offer retiree health benefits from a financial standpoint. It's very important.
Morris County provides retiree health benefits for their existing employees.
Yes. A couple more departments that we'll go through real quickly. Public Works is down 3.4%, or a decrease of $146,000. That's really due to new leadership, good financial stewardship, retirement, and management of headcount by our new Director of Public Works, Ken O'Brien. Sewage treatment is down 8.1%, or $100,000. The Madison-Chatham joint meeting processes our sewage, and the bill is split between Madison and Chatham. Council's aware of this. Residents may not be aware of this. That split changed. Last year it was 70-30. This year it's going to be Madison will pick up 62.2% of the bill. So we're budgeting for a $100,000 drop in that. That number is very illustrative. It's got some extra in there because we're still working through those numbers with the Madison-Chatham joint meeting, but I'm comfortable with that number being adequate for the budget. Grants down significantly, but I don't want anybody to be alarmed. This is purely accounting. In grants, when they come in, we get revenue and we get appropriations, so it's zero impact to the borough dollar-wise. There's two ways to account for the grants. We either put them in the budget now or we wait and insert them, and you'll see throughout the year the council will pass a resolution for a Chapter 159 insertion of an item in a budget. I want to do it that way instead because in the past Robert has guessed some of the numbers and then they've been wrong. So throughout the year we'll just have more of those budget insertions to do, but it's a wash. We'll get revenue and expense, so there'll be no impact. But when you look at it from an operating standpoint on our budget, why are our grants down? That's why. So here again is the list of all the department appropriations, and I want to ask if there's any other questions on this. I'll keep moving along. I'm not reading this, I promise. If you want to learn more about surplus, visit RoseNet. Look at this slide. Surplus is basically two things. When we have conservative estimates on revenues and we get more money than we thought, or when we have department heads that are very good financial stewards and don't spend all their money. Those two items cause extra money to flow to the bottom of the budget. At the end of the year, that money becomes surplus. That surplus can then be used in the next year's budget. And you always see that as a line, prior year municipal surplus as a revenue line. To keep property taxes down, we use surplus. I will report that surplus generated this year was significant, $5.4 million. That's an increase of $812,000 in surplus balances. I always like to say it's a bathtub and money goes out when we put it into the budget and money comes in when surplus is generated. The level of the bathtub or the piggy bank has gone up, and it's gone up significantly this year. And the question is why? Why would it go up so much? Construction code fees were significant this year, and the department heads did a particularly good job not spending all their dollars. We have always told them, you do not need to spend your entire budget, just spend what you need. We won't reduce your budget for your rock salt if you don't spend it this year, because we know next year we may need more rock salt or the price could go up. So as a result, the department heads are have shown tremendous fiscal responsibility, so that has flushed out in surplus.
So, Jim, one question, or actually two questions. The first is, I don't know if you got into it in here, but what was the recommendation from the Strategic Planning Committee about how much the total generated surplus should be versus the total budget? And where are we in relationship to that?
So I'll say two things. We're over. We're outside the guidelines by generating too much surplus. I would say trying to estimate surplus is trying to throw a water balloon off a 10-story building and have it land in a cup. So we get it close, but we couldn't anticipate the amount of construction code fees that were going to come in from KRE and from the parking deck.
And when we come to the revenue part,
Well,
we'll see how it's going to be used.
well, I was going to say two things. That one, when you look at it, non-taxable revenues was only up about $100K over where we were last year, but the cancellation of prior appropriations was significantly higher this year. It was over $700,000 more. So then I looked back real fast, and I noticed in the draft that you put together, we're only adding $3,000 in additional surplus money this year as revenue.
That's why we're not going to talk about the revenue side tonight. That is an option to use more surplus. The challenge is that we just make it sustainable.
I understand
And I
that
think
part.
there's some solutions to do that. But I want to make sure that we're comfortable with all the expense numbers and some of the numbers on the revenue side. But yes, that's going to be a big discussion for council.
So I'll schedule some time with you. I didn't have a lot of time between Friday and now to look at this, as I'm looking at it, I'll have a lot of more questions I'll get
Understood.
into. Thank
So
you.
those of you who are numbers oriented and, this looks real nice and pretty and is simple, this is what gets into the weeds in terms of how surplus is generated and the bank account at the, or the piggy bank at the end of the year versus the beginning of the year for surplus. I won't go through the numbers, but if anybody ever wants to know anything about this or anything else, stop by. I'm happy to explain it. I know council understands this process. I'm happy to sit down and talk more with anyone as well about it. So I want to jump to the electric utility. Love this picture of the water and light plant from, I don't know, probably about 1910 or something. In any event, some bad news on the electric utility front, but don't worry, Christine and everyone else, there's good news too, and I think it evens out. We had sales that were a little softer this year than what we had budgeted and estimated, and I always typically try to estimate on the low side, and everyone says, geez, Jim, you're estimating too low. Well, it was below the low side because it was a very cool summer. There really weren't any significant extended hot days, so sales were off by $354,000. There's going to be, I've been projecting it and talking about it, and there is going to be this year a significant increase in transmission costs of $460,000 in 2018 that we didn't have in 2017. But there is good news. First, the block energy prices in 2018 are going to go down by $700,000. That's significant, so that's going to offset the increase in transmission costs. Second, based on administration estimates, we're comfortable that both the targeted rebate and the $1.5 million dividend that were first installed in this year for the dividend are sustainable and can be offered for 2 more years based on the projections. A little bit about transparency. I actually have this annual report from 1944. I found it in a box of my dad's old stuff, and it's a really neat document, and it talks about way back then in 1944 they were transferring revenue from the utility into the municipal budget. It's something we've been doing since 1944. It's been discussed at great lengths. Sometimes people seem to be surprised, wow, did you know? It's something that's been going on since 1944, and way back in 1944, there was a tremendous, for whatever reason, use of surplus that year where surplus was significantly more than property taxes. If you ever want to learn more about this, please contact me. There's my plug with my email. This is the electric utility performance. I just grayed out the years that may not be of interest. I just have highlighted what I already told you, that cash collections were down, that transmission costs are going up, that the amount to be transferred into the municipal budget and the free balance numbers are really what are driving our ability to do the $1.5 million electric dividend in the coming years. I do hope with this budget that, as requested by Councilwoman Bailey, we continue to reduce our reliance on the electric utility. I'm hoping that we'll reduce it by about 7% this year. So the 2018 column here is, on the expense side, is exactly what goes into our municipal budget, into the state budget document. Remember I talked about 3 budgets? So I always like to put this out. I think this is maybe the 3rd or 4th time I've shown this. This is a residential rate comparison. I'm not going to dwell on it except at Madison. If you're a resident that uses 855 kilowatts of electricity a month, your bill in 2017 on a monthly basis would have been $159. If you were at Rockland Electric, it would be 163, PSE&G 149, and there are various other utilities listed there. There were only 3 utilities in the state that had reductions in the electric rate, and Madison had the highest reduction.
Hey, Jim, one question. With some new users coming online, specifically the full year we're going to get out of Allergen, and also with KRE being occupied this year, are we projecting that into our estimates for the sales this year?
Somewhat. You can see the estimate for 2018 is 22,500,000. Again, being conservative on that. All of the newer installations have significant high energy efficiency. So Realogy replaced the old Verizon building that was there. The energy efficiency that they put in there was significant. So if you look at Madison's kilowatt hour consumption in 2017 versus what it was in 2000, it's actually down, even though you would say, well, there's some more corporations, there's a few more homes that have been built, the energy efficiency.
Everyone's going to CFLs and LEDs and a little bit of solar.
Exactly. So electric utility capital, this is the 5-year capital plan, just showing you the automated meters. We are planning on buying a significant number of automated meters. In the coming months, we'll be talking about that. We have that system working properly with the handheld devices. And we continue to have the reserve for substation repairs, which was requested by the Utility Advisory Committee, knowing that we have 2 substations that are multi-million-dollar pieces of equipment that will need to be replaced in the next 15 years. We're collecting some money and reserving. Oh, sorry.
Sure. I'll keep going. I'll get when we get to the end of the utility capital.
Water utility, tremendous employees there. Picture of Tom DiBiase standing over there looking over the hole. That's not that. That happens quite frequently where you have water pipes and other pipes going crisscross around each other and everything else, and the borough water utility having to deal with it. A great photo of the Midwood water tanks from 1944 when they were...
Never seen that picture.
Barrels.
Yeah.
That was inside the 1944 document. The water utility, in summary, performance was as expected in 2017. We talked about this last year and the year before. We have had a significant increase in the capital requirement asks of the water utility, and we have been using this past year $400,000 in the municipal budget that was transferred from the water utility to the municipal budget. When we're only collecting a couple $1 million, those are too big numbers to have to manage, and right now we need to come to some decisions, and I think there are some options out there that will put the water utility on a better long-term financial footing. Short-term we're fine, but I think we should talk a little bit long-term, so I just want to show you first the water capital, which is a significant amount, which will be listed in the 5-year capital plan you previously received. In prior years, we did $200,000 or $300,000 worth of projects. Now we're talking about doing $800,000 to $1 million worth of projects. It's aging infrastructure. There's the new Water Quality Accountability Act and other requirements. But most importantly, council's desire to make sure that our water infrastructure is solid. We're making sure that we have a good list of what needs to get done and that we're going to find a way to fund it.
I think one thing quickly point out with this is the fact that we're able to reinvest in our water utility and also maintain our sanitary sewer collection system, where many municipalities, well, maybe not many, but there's quite a few in the state that have been looking at selling off the utilities because the investment dollar is well beyond their capacity.
Correct. It's critical that we spend the money now on the critical infrastructure.
And so we're still sitting, though, on $1 million or thereabouts in the water utility that we reserve for meters. We're still not showing using any of that money at this point. I know you showed in the electrical plan that we were going to be doing metering.
So we're going to add a line to the water capital here, Pat. That'll come from that reserve because we're going to order about $80,000. Our goal is to order about $80,000 of the water modules, which connect to current water meters. So if we have a water meter that's within 20 years old, Jim Trimble goes in and can connect it and hook it up. So we're looking to use at least $80,000 of that this year when we 2019, 2020, when we look to flip to a fully automated system, that's going to be funded to a certain extent from that water capital, along with the continued replacement of those water modules and water meters.
And the older meters would be swapped out altogether?
Correct. Yes. When we can swap out older meters, we absolutely need to.
We should probably have like at the bottom of some sort of schedule that shows the balance, and then as we work it down, what's remaining, so people are reminded when we're all gone that it's there.
That's a good idea. I'm going to write that down.
Jim?
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mayor. Jim. Line 9, you're utilizing $400,000. Given the tightness of the water utility, can we reduce that number and just contribute less? And how will we do that?
I think there's a couple of moves that we can do, and that would be one of them. I think we can reduce that number to $300,000 and boost the amount of municipal surplus. We talked about having a really good year in a municipal surplus and it being tight in water. I don't like the idea of relying on municipal surplus forever, but if we were to take $100,000 out of this $800,000 windfall, that gives us a number of years where we could really reduce the reliance on the water utility for purposes in the municipal budget. So that would give us $100,000. If you look at the bottom, line 13, we really want that to be about zero, and right now it's going into the negative. We knew we were doing it in 2017 because we had a huge project on Central Avenue, but we really want to try to get 2018, 19, and 20 closer to zero. And what that is not a draw on the surplus and not tremendous growth in the surplus. One way is what Audrey mentioned, which I actually think is a really good way. Another way is, I was talking to Ray about this afternoon, line number 1, tariff collections, I think I'm estimating that too low, so I'll come back to council estimating that at $2.55 million, Mayor, because if you look back, last year was not a big water year, and we were still at $2.520, so I think we can, that'll be a plus 75 to this budget, and I think we could do one more thing, which is I think we could knock the capital number from $1 million, which is number 5. I think we can knock that down to 900, but then rely on Bob Vogel and Utility Advisory Committee to scour through the capital numbers on the previous page and just make sure that we can kind of keep within 900,000. Keeping in mind that we can appropriate $950,000 at the end of the project if there's extra money, that $50,000 lapses back in. We've kept within the band.
But we do possibly have a trend towards more expensive water projects because we've got such an aging water system, and this is what our department has said to us, is that these pipes are really old. As we saw in Central Avenue, that project did balloon up to $1 million. Well, we didn't anticipate that at first, so we've got to take that into consideration going into the future.
I think it would be really good if we took this year to really comb through this number with Tom DBS, with Bob Vogel, with Utility Advisory, and with Council, and come back and say, do we really feel, is $1 million the number that we have to do every year in capital, or is it $900,000, or is it $1.1 million? It's significantly more than it was. If you look at the water utility page, if you go to line number 5, in 2015, we just did $200,000.
Right.
And now we're up significantly.
Yeah. Well, because the key is if you look at line 12, if you had put 2021 in, you'd have a negative there.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Because and so I think the key is coming up with some comfort or some level that we feel comfortable we don't want to really go below. Definitely 0 is
Warm in here.
not a good number.
Yep. But let the record reflect the mayor. Let me take my jacket off because it's hot. I agree, Pat. And if we're able to make just those 3 changes and estimates come in as we thought, we're almost to sustainability with the water utility, going from, as you said, a negative that could go down. But I think we need to take a look at it throughout the course of this.
Well, I mean, it's not going to fly until you get the line 13 to be 0 or slightly positive, right?
Mm-hmm.
As long as it's a negative number, that surplus is going to go down and down and down until you get to 0.
Correct.
and then it's
Correct.
going to go below that, which.
Well, it can't happen, so that is correct. So as I've talked about, I think we can make some serious headway just with the decisions the conversation we've had here today, but I think we need to look at, I think this is the year we really look at water utility. That'll make Carmela happy. So, okay. So capital balances, I talked about the piggy banks in the 3 different accounts. The current fund, the water capital has $376,000 currently in it, free and available funds. The electric utility, that's not including the reserved money, Pat, right? The electric capital fund balance, capital improvement fund is $899, and the general capital is $1.6 million. So that's just for reporting purposes. That's the level that we have in the piggy banks as of January 1, I should say, because there is a temporary budget that appropriates funds into those pots. So we're in decent shape. For those people who don't know, Madison does pay-as-you-go. We put enough money into the capital improvement fund, and we pay for almost everything as we need it fully and don't need to borrow. And I think that is one of the main reasons why we're AAA. I'm coming to the end, I promise, Melanie. The 5-year capital plan is here, and the council got a breakdown of every one of these. We talked to the library earlier this evening, but I just wanted to point this out, that this is the total number. We had talked about putting $3.8 million into the general capital improvement fund, and as you see, the blue line for 2018 is 4.4. That may seem scary. Wait a minute, you're only putting 3.8 in, but you're going to spend 4.4. But if you recall, we had 1.6 million in the pot already. And so I think we'll be okay, especially when we have projects and we have cancellation of appropriations. That puts the money back in. We have a $1 million road project. We only spend $900,000. $100,000 goes back in. So I'm comfortable with these numbers for general capital. I'm comfortable with the $3.8 million in the budget to go into the capital pot. And one final thing, which is important, we did this last year. The reserve for tax appeals is a separate reserve that is established to pay property owners if they successfully appeal their property taxes and receive a reimbursement or a check for a payment. There's an example that I have here in the second paragraph where a property owner paid $20,000 in taxes in 2016, and after settlement it was determined that the property owner should have paid $19,000. In that instance, the borough pays $1,000 from the tax appeal reserve. We don't have a special budget line for this, so we've always established a tax reserve. What I would like to do is 2 things. In this year's budget, I've actually baked in or inserted $75,000 budgeted line that will go from the budget into the tax appeal reserve. So it's a continual funding of that. And then Ray and I believe that it would be smart for council to do what we did, similar to what we did last year, which is appropriate a portion of the surplus. As we talked about, there was significant surplus this year. Appropriate $100,000 of surplus to the tax appeal reserve this year. So why are we concerned about tax appeal reserves? It dropped by a couple $100,000 this year. We had a significant number of tax appeal reserves. We do have tax appeals. We do have a number of larger tax appeals still out there. And we're anticipating with the federal tax legislation that residents that may not have really looked at their property taxes as closely will now potentially look at them more closely. And we want to be able to anticipate a potential spike in tax appeals. So for those reasons, I think it makes sense for council to, and I'd like to recommend to council that $100,000 be taken from surplus and appropriated to the tax appeal reserve. Are there any questions on that?
Pat?
So then you're really asking us to put almost $200,000 aside this year between 75 and 100. Mm-hmm. And then you're also asking us to, so I was looking at this real fast. The line for uncollected taxes, how much was that going to be going up?
2%.
Which is how much?
I apologize.
34,000.
Reserve for uncollected
34,000.
taxes going up $34,000.
Yeah, so
That's a little bit different. The reserve for uncollected tax is different than the reserve for tax appeal. The reserve for uncollected tax, we need to have it in case property owners don't pay their taxes on time. We still have to pay the Board of Education. We
Understandable.
still have to pay the county. So if we needed to collect $100, we don't bill $100 to the residents, we bill $101 to the residents, and then that $1 covers us because we know not everybody's going to pay their taxes on time.
But I mean, effectively, we collect 100% of the taxes because we either get it from the owner. A lot of them actually come from the banks who carry the mortgage, so they always pay on time. And if someone is not paying us, we sell their lien for 100 cents on the dollar. So ultimately, we collect everything. But what we're really saying is we want to add another $200,000 this year to sort of the pot of money that you could look that way. Because generally speaking, the money we set aside for uncollected taxes really just becomes part of the surplus every year.
That's correct.
I mean, almost 100% of it. Okay.
Yes.
And remind me again, how many times have we added money to that pot over the last 4 years? I think the first year I was on council, or maybe the year before, we set aside almost $400,000. We're currently sitting at a reserve of over $400K. How much have we added to that over the years? Do you remember?
I don't have those numbers here. I can give them to you. Last year we added 200. The year before we didn't add anything. Okay. We tend to do it when we have a good surplus year.
Yeah.
And it makes sense given the fact that we think there's going to be some upcoming tax appeals.
And the money that's in that reserve account, can we repurpose it down the road if we don't feel it's going to be needed for, let's say, for instance, a year or two from now, we don't see any significant increase in the amount of tax appeals. We settle the significant ones we have. Are we able to move that back into general surplus, or is it landlocked there forever?
I'll check with the auditors. I think it can be brought back in. I do think that, like dropping a water balloon from 10 stories, I do think that we'll have a number of tax appeals that we settle this year. We always do. Mm-hmm. So it could be $50,000 to $100,000 at a minimum.
And if you don't bring it back in, the other option is you don't fund it for a few years, and it.
We don't. Well, we're now talking about though putting a line item that says we're going to put $75,000 in year after year after year. So we're kind of almost taking care of it to some degree anyway. I'm just wondering, do we really need to add another $100,000?
And one thing for residents to understand, so there's a tax appeal and someone gets $1,000. The reality is the tax is only 22% would have gone to Madison, but 100% of that money comes out of our pocket.
Yes, correct.
We're not going to the county and saying, oh, by the way, someone won a tax appeal, you owe us 32 cents. We're not going to the Board of Education and say you owe us 60 cents.
Yeah. No, I'm aware of that, but we typically also negotiate.
Actually, I was doing that for
for the audience.
Audience, because that is one of these things that just gets you.
We send out the bills, we collect all the money, and have it easy.
Yep.
Okay.
Are you asking for a motion on this?
I am asking for a motion on it if there aren't any other questions.
So on the.
So I'd ask for a motion for $100,000 to be taken from surplus to the tax appeal reserve. Is there a motion to make that?
Make a motion.
Second.
Any discussion on that?
I'm just going to say I'm going to abstain at this point because I really don't have enough information to think that that's necessary here and now.
Yeah, so certainly this is work in progress, and that will go forward as the guideline. And as we see the revenue side, spend more time on the revenue side, we can answer. But for now, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And one abstention. Yep.
Okay, thank you. With that, we'll just circle back to the end, which is the beginning, which is what Councilwoman Bailey said in terms of the discussion and decisions. We need to talk about capital spending, taxes, the electric utility surplus, what steps to prepare for the tax reform, and the water utility. On February 26th, the department heads will come in and will present their goals, objectives. You have in front of you the black book, which has every line for every department in there. There will be no homework or quiz or test on that. If you have any questions, let me know. And on February 26th, we'll hear from the department heads, and then I'll come back on March 5th with a budget. I'd like to talk to you, any of you interested in talking to me about the budget. Between now and then, feel free to reach out to me. We'll work on crafting a budget that on March 5th hopefully will be a good one for discussion and hopeful approval.
And any other questions or guidance for Jim as he continues to move it forward?
I don't know if you mentioned it, but we have enough money to continue the sums coming out of the electric department to individual.
Both $150 by need resident rebate, as well as the $1.5 million electric utility dividend, which equates to over 7% rate reduction.
Okay, and what I'll do at this point is later on, if anyone wants to make comments, you can do that during the general comment period. There'll be more meetings on the budget when you'll be able to comment, but anyone in the audience that has questions, so not comments but questions, you can step up, state your name, your address, ask the question, we'll capture it, and after all the questions are asked, then we'll answer it. So any questions from the audience? So you come up to, we still have to step up to the, so again, what we'll do is we're not going to go answer them one by one. We'll capture all the questions and answer them all. So.
Hi, Missy Elias, 40 Green Village Road. I'll just make one quick comment, which is really
questions, but
I just want to say really excellent presentation. And one question relates to the joint sewer utility and the other excellent presentation that was made a month or two ago with respect to the, I think it was almost $6 million of expected upgrades, improvements. And so my question is, will any of that come into play in 2018? And if so, how?
Question is, the improvements required at the plant will that come into 2018, and we can also touch on again how the allocation works between the two municipalities and how that changes year to year. Any other questions before we answer that one? All right. So you did a great job, Jim. So seeing no other questions, I'll let you answer that question.
I'll let Ray jump in and help me as well. $6 million is the estimate for capital improvements to the Madison-Chatham joint meeting, which will help satisfy a DEP mandate that's required and will help increase capacity and ensure that we have significant and enough capacity for any future build-out. We don't anticipate those costs to hit in 2018 with the exception of potentially some engineering costs. We anticipate that we will borrow that money first short-term via a construction loan through the Environmental Infrastructure Trust, and then long-term through a debt borrowing through the Environmental Infrastructure Trust. We go that route because the Environmental Infrastructure Trust gives half of the money to us with interest-free. So it's great. Can't beat interest-free. Typically it'll be a 20 or 30 year. In this instance, I believe it's going to be a 30-year borrowing for that $6 million. That $6 million amount will be split between Chatham and Madison. So Madison will incur over $4 million, but not the entire $6 million in debt. That number is what shows up on our municipal budget under debt borrowings.
Okay, thank you. So as Jim also outlined in the calendar, more to come at our next meeting and special meeting on March 5th. Moving on to item 3, town swap event. Pat, you already set the table on that with your report. Anything more to share outside the
Well, no, we're copying a good idea that's been successful in Summit. The Environmental Commission suggested it, so we're going to test it out. So it's April 28th. It'll be indoors at the DPW yard in the garage.
We have the chair. I've just remember we have our chair. Claire, did you want to comment on it?
Sure, have Claire come up.
Well, you have to come. And Claire Whitcomb, who is the chair of the Environmental Commission, and this is one of their initiatives. So if you want to. Not to cut Ray off, but it's good to get the volunteers to talk about it.
I'm just going to tell you, this is Ellen Cranefist's baby. She's just run with it, soup to nuts. She's met extensively with the DPW. They've tested what can be swapped and not clothing because they're going to be inundated. And I think it ends at 1. So, but
8 a.m. to 1 p.m.
Okay.
Saturday, April
we
28th.
need 24 volunteers, and there's a sign-up genius to volunteer.
All right, thank you.
And I'll just run real quickly through the list of things that are going to be accepted. So it's non-upholstered furniture, electronic gadgets, computers, laptops, but not televisions, small appliances, children's toys and play equipment, collectibles, household items, sports equipment, exercise machines, draperies, curtains, area rugs, but no major stains, musical instruments, and music. Things that are not going to be accepted: clothing, baby seats, bike helmets, televisions, books and magazines, mattresses, stuffed animals, liquids of any kind, any type of hazardous material, any weapons, textile and material, beauty supplies, and upholstered furniture. So they're trying to find things that they can repurpose. They also said that in the case that things are not taken back, we're not going to be discarding them. They'll be donated to a worthy cause.
So it's a great recycling at its best when it doesn't have to be changed into something different. It's reused, so I think excellent. My one suggestion, I know some of the flyers have been done, is whether, and I'll just throw that out there, you can take it back to committee, is whether you want to cut off the drop-off earlier than 1 o'clock, because otherwise you've got people dropping stuff off and no one can grab it. So that's my only thought. So this is, we have Resolution 82 on the consent agenda, which will give the official go-ahead on the town swap event, and all of us will be, between now and then, cleaning out our basements, garages, and attics. I've got a whole list of things. So thank you for that work. Ordinances for hearing. Will the clerk please read the statement?
Ordinances scheduled for hearing were introduced by title and passed on the first reading at the regular meeting of the council held on Monday, January the 22nd, 2018. All were posted and filed according to law, and copies were made available to the general public requesting the same.
I call up ordinances for second reading and ask the clerk to read said ordinances by title.
Ordinance 5, 2018, ordinance of the Borough of Madison amending Chapter 15 of the Madison Borough Code entitled Downtown Development Commission.
I open the hearing for Ordinance 5. Anyone wishing to comment, please step forward. Seeing none, I close the hearing. And we have a motion? Maureen?
Oh, I'm sorry. I move Ordinance 5, 2018.
I'll second it.
Any council discussion? Roll call vote.
Ms. Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Rowe?
Yes.
Ms. Byrne?
Yes.
Mr. Hoover?
Yes.
I declare Ordinance 5-2008 adopted and finally passed, and ask the clerk to publish notice thereof in the newspaper and file the ordinance in accordance with the law.
Ordinance 6, 2018, ordinance of the Borough of Madison appropriating $32,500 from the General Capital Improvement Fund for the purchase of replacement bulletproof vests.
I open the hearing for Ordinance 6. Anyone wishing to comment, please step forward. Seeing none, I close the hearing.
I'll make a motion, please.
Second.
Any council discussion? Roll call vote.
Ms. Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Rowe?
Yes.
Ms. Byrne?
Yes.
Mr. Hoover?
Yes.
I declare Ordinance 6-2018 adopted and finally passed, and ask the clerk to publish notice thereof in the newspaper and file the ordinance in accordance with the law. And now we're on to our second of invitations for discussion. This is when you may comment on any topic. Again, same rules apply. Please try to keep your comments to 3 minutes, but I will give you a 1-minute warning at 3 and cut you at 4. Please state your name, your address, and write the same on the clipboard. Anyone wishing to comment, please step forward. Sure.
Terry Romano, 29 West Lane. This is not the first time I've addressed this concern with the town and the mayor. There's a visibility impairment issue on the corner of West Lane and Crossgates Road. I wrote a letter to the editor of the Madison Eagle back on October 11th, 2016, and then I sent an email to you, Mayor Connolly, on June 13th of 2017, with an attachment of a petition signed by the 20 residents that live on West Lane. Not to mention the numerous calls to the town, the police, about the impaired visibility due to the trees and shrubs planted on the corner property of West Lane and Cross Gates. We were told in the past by Madison Officer Luongo that they would speak to the homeowner about keeping them trimmed. Officer Luongo also stated that this is not a high-traffic area, so there wasn't much he could do. This is beyond a property maintenance issue. The town should not have allowed these trees to be planted so close to the curb. I believe they're in violation of Chapter 195, Land Development, Article 5, Zoning. This morning, at about 8 o'clock, there was a bad accident at this intersection. Both cars were severely damaged, airbags were set off, the passengers in both vehicles were shaken, ambulances were dispatched. I don't know the severity of the injuries. This has nothing to do with a high-traffic area. This is all about visibility in this intersection due to shrubbery. These trees and shrubs are planted at the curb, creating a wall. I understand, being the owner of a corner property, that they're trying to have some sort of privacy. However, their privacy is now at the expense of public safety. Where these trees are planted, a homeowner would not be able to erect a fence in that same location because the town has ordinance and setback requirements. These trees and shrubs act like a solid fence without the required setbacks. I urge all the members of this council to take a test drive. Drive onto West Lane and try to pull out onto Cross Gates. See how far you have to pull out into the intersection before you have clear visibility. Keep in mind, this is the winter. The trees and shrubs have not yet begun to bloom. So if this is the visibility issue in the dead of winter, imagine what we're dealing with in the spring, summer, and fall. Also keep in mind there are no sidewalks on West Lane or Cross Gates, so pedestrians have to walk in the street. I know this is not the only intersection in town with visibility issues, but one of the primary goals of government is to provide safety for all.
1 minute.
Being of its citizens. Let's not wait until there's a fatality to do something proactive.
Thank you, Terry. So you'll take that back to Lieutenant Longo, and we'll get a report back to you, Terry, on that. Thank you for sharing. Anyone else wishing to be heard, please step forward. Seeing none, I close this part of the meeting, and we go to introduction of ordinances. Will the clerk please read the statement?
Ordinance is scheduled for first reading, have a hearing date set for February the 26th, 2018. All will be published in the Madison Eagle, posted on the bulletin board, and made available to members of the public requesting copies.
I call up ordinances for first reading and ask the Borough Clerk to read said ordinances by title.
Ordinance 7, 2018, ordinance of the Borough of Madison appropriating $35,000 from the General Capital Improvement Fund for purchase of a police department vehicle.
I make a motion that we approve.
Second.
Council discussion. Roll call vote.
Ms. Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Rowe?
Yes.
Ms. Byrne?
Yes.
Mr. Hoover?
Yes.
Ordinance 8, 2018, ordinance of the Borough of Madison appropriating $10,000 from the Municipal Open Space Trust Fund for an update of the Open Space and Recreation Plan.
Mayor, I move ordinance 8-2018.
I'll second that motion.
Oscar, you want to do a quick explanation for the audience?
Okay, we're required by the state to update the open space and recreation plan every 10 years. It was done in 2009, so we are ready to make that update. The Land Conservancy of New Jersey has made a proposal to us. They did our original plan in 2009. They aren't changing the price for updating it in the current year, and it will be taken out of the Open Space Trust Fund money.
Thank you. Any other council discussion? Roll call vote.
Ms. Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Rowe?
Yes.
Ms. Byrne?
Yes.
Mr. Hoover?
Yes.
Okay, consent agenda resolutions. Will the clerk please read the statement?
Consent agenda resolutions will be enacted with a single motion. Any resolution requiring expenditure is supported by a certification of availability of funds. Any resolution requiring discussion will be removed from the consent agenda. All resolutions will be reflected in full in the minutes.
Mr. Mayor, I move resolutions R68-2018 through R78-2018 and R80-2018 through R82-2018.
Second.
Any discussion or any that need to be pulled? Roll call vote, please.
Ms. Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Rowe?
Yes.
Ms. Byrne?
Yes.
Mr. Hoover?
Yes.
There is no unfinished business. Approval of vouchers.
Vouchers. The current fund, $3,719,034.44. General Capital Fund, $131,231.35. Electric Operating Fund, $840,023. Water Operating Fund, $24,623.53. And the Trust's $84,551.97. Total is $4,763,464.29.
I make a motion to approve the vouchers.
Well, I'll second
You
them.
said 84,000, and it's really shows on the list 48,000.
Oh, my mistake. Water Capitals, the Trust are $48,551.
Thank you.
Same total.
Okay.
Move the corrected number.
I move the corrected number.
I'll second the corrected number.
All right, any discussion? Roll call vote.
Ms. Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Rowe?
Yes.
Byrne?
Yes.
Mr. Hoover?
Yes. Yes.
Yep, there is no new business.
I make a motion we adjourn then.
You're here.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you. Well done. Jim, excellent job.
Yep.
Good job.
John, eloquent as usual.
All of a sudden, the heat came on. No, I felt a blast.
Bob was
In the middle of, unless,
We started, I said to Jim, anybody can do it? He's like,
yeah, well,